And then another time I was sort of like getting flirty with this guy. We were doing a little sexting, and he told me that his fantasy was to have a threesome with a woman and his father.
It's no accident that sounds like you're leveling up in a video game. 48% of 18 to 29-year-olds have an online dating profile.
Make them work for it.
45% of people say they're more frustrated with this form of dating than hopeful.
There are so many people you can connect with.
Should I swipe right?
Swipe wrong. Swipe wrong. Setting the record straight on dating apps. Everyday people telling everyday stories of the swipe right world with your host, Chaos.
Well, I know he had a good time.
It's the podcast that is number one at gas station pumps around the world. And that would be true if they played podcasts at gas station pumps, and would be true if a lot of other factors were involved too. Welcome to the Swipe Wrong Podcast. I am Chaos. I am the guy who brings you the stories of other people so you don't feel like you're the only one who is attracting the crazy, because it's not just you. There's enough crazy for all of us to go around, and there's enough good times as well. So enjoy it. So even today, like we've wrapped up season 1 a while ago, and it's just, been in post-production and putting everything together. But even today, I had met somebody new, and we were talking and just getting their stories, just a friend. That's all it really was. And this person, of course, I told him that we were working on this podcast and things were going on and things like that. And she's like, "Oh, I got a story for you. The story I have for you." And this is one where she was seeing a guy for 5-6 months and thought they were exclusive, was under the impression that they were exclusive, and for some reason just had a feeling that things weren't right. They went out, they got a little intoxicated, and went back to her house, and this is after a few weekends of some phenomenal sex. And she's like, "Are you seeing anybody else? Are you talking to anybody else?" And he said, Nope, I'm sure not. I'm not talking to anybody else. Here's my phone and here's my passcode. And she opened up his phone and his passcode, and one of the first messages was to another girl. And I'm just going, what? What the fuck are you doing? I mean, if he would have just turned and said, "Oh, by the way, I am talking to other people. I'm somebody who, I know we've had a good time. We're not exclusive. We haven't talked, just whatever." But no, he said, "Hey, by the way, here's my phone." And she's like, "Fuck yeah, I'm going to check." And sure enough, that's what she found. So it's the stories, and that wasn't making the podcast until I found out about it today. I'm like, let me just share. So I'm amped for every episode. I really am. Every episode to me has got something different, awesome to offer. And for me, this one's even more unique because this person's we've been in each other's lives for about 10 to 15 years, I would say, somewhere in that area, but mainly from like outside looking in. Like, we've had a few, close conversations, but man, I was really like, we had a great conversation. You get to hear it. I got to know her so much better, and she's such a great person. I was pretty amped about it, and I think you guys will thoroughly enjoy it. Phenomenal personality, amazing outlook, and this is not the first time it's not the last time, I should say, that you will hear from her. So this episode, first, sit back, relax, put your feet up, grab your popcorn, get ready for the show. And if you are in traffic, please do not hit the person next to you. Enjoy The Professor Fucks It Up with Marianne. And one more word, of course, from the quote-unquote legal department.
Disclaimer: the views and opinions expressed in this program are those of the speaker and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions or any entities they represent. This podcast is about dating experiences. It is not to say one dating app is better or worse than another.
as opposed to old school dating, what'd you say? Like, hey, this video game might be fun. How did you end up there?
So I actually started probably back in 2020.
Okay.
It was during the height of the pandemic. And I had been on dating apps previously years back, but I took some time off to work on my career. So my focus was not on dating. But when 2020, came about and we were in lockdown and stuff, I was like, works at a steady pace at this point. Let me just drop back into the dating world. So I got onto Bumble and Tinder. And that was a really, kind of a shit show, but also really, really great learning experience as well. So yeah, that's kind of where I started.
So it's a shit show that you don't really buy tickets to. Most shows you're buying tickets, you're enjoying the matinee, buttering your popcorn, having a nice time. And this one, you're just kind of like, I don't know what the fuck is going to happen next. I assume.
No, I literally went into it with zero expectations. I was like, let's just see what happens. Let's see what kind of men are out there, and kind of go from there.
So rewind to past 2020 before the pandemic, and you were, way back before, when you're kind of fucking around before you focused on your career. What were you on then?
Oh my God, Plenty of Fish.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah. Not like Farmers Only or anything like that. Then.
No Christian Mingle, no Farmers
Christian
Only.
Mingle. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. It was Plenty of Fish, which was also, they're all kind of shit shows because it brings so many different types of personalities, characters. It was. But back then, Plenty of Fish was it. You know what I mean? It was Bumble and Tinder are today.
I remember it. So what's is there a big difference between Plenty of Fish and Bumble and Tinder? Is there something you're like, all right, that was kind of unique about that, and this is kind of, it's more hyperactive now or anything?
So I guess the thing back in the day that I liked about Plenty of Fish is that you could search profiles by by certain categories, whereas on Bumble or Tinder it's just swiping on a bunch of people. So Plenty of Fish was cool because you could drill down. However, nowadays it's kind of ghetto. So
is it really?
Yeah, it's pretty ghetto on there. So I would say the quality of people, and I'm not going to say their behavior is much different because dudes are dudes. You got some guys who are total gentlemen and respectful and really do want to get to know you, and then you've got the dudes that are just looking to hook up. And but it's just a different vibe. When I got onto Bumble and Tinder in 2020, I actually did get back onto Plenty of Fish just to kind of see what it was like.
Okay.
One of my friends from junior high met her husband on Plenty of Fish back then.
So tell me the biggest, craziest date that sticks out in your mind.
Okay, so I met a guy on Bumble. I believe he was around my age, maybe a few years older. In his pictures, he looked, pretty cute, good looking guy. His interests kind of, sparked interest in me. Sound like we had some things in common. And I think he was a professor. I can't remember what he taught, but anyhow, it sounded good at the time. And we didn't do a lot of talking. And I will say after this date, I switched up the way I went about how I start conversations, when I'll actually go meet a guy. He was sort of the catalyst to get me to a stage where I'm like, nope, not doing that again.
So let me ask you this. So
Sure.
do you do a phone call before a date, or do you just talk back and forth through text or the app?
So that's a great question, because that actually has something to do with this specific date. So in this date, I did not do a ton of texting before, and I did not do a phone call. And after this date, I was like, never again. I either need to speak to them on the phone so I can kind of get an idea of, if there's any sort of interest in even going on a date at that point.
Fair enough.
So we didn't do a lot of texting. It was kind of like hey, do you want to meet up? And I was like, yeah, sure. Why not? I'll give this a whirl. So we met for a drink at a restaurant. Now, at that time, that was like when I guess restaurants were just opening back up. But it was like when you had to wear a mask indoors until you got seated, all this kind of stuff. And not a lot of people were out at this time. So I was happy. Sure.
Let me say this too, real quick. So, you're in California, where it felt like it was locked down for forever, right? I mean,
yes.
you guys were locked down. Like, I'm in the Midwest, where they were just like, "Hey, put on a mask." 5 minutes later, they're like, "Cool, let's open everything back up." But you were locked down for a good 6 months or something like that, right?
We really were, and everybody was starting to get totally stir crazy, and just let me out of here.
Sure,
we're not used to being locked up. So So I was like, yeah, cool. I'll meet this guy. Why not? It gets me out. Cause I live alone. I don't have any animals at this point. So I was starting to get kind of feeling cooped up and a little lonely. So I was like, yeah, let's do this. So we meet there. Number one, he's way shorter than he said on his profile.
That's insane to me. I've heard that a few times, and I don't understand a dude saying he's 5'10" and he shows up 5'3", and you're going, if you're going to lie about that, bro, what the fuck? I understand dudes exaggerate about size, and size matters, but that's insane. All right, sorry.
Yeah.
That one just blows me away.
It really is. It's do you think I'm not going to realize that? I'm 5'6", so I'm average, or maybe a little on the taller side for women. So I prefer to have a man that's 5'10" and up. Right. 6'1" is my sweet spot. But yeah, if the guy has a really great personality, I'm not going to be like, oh, he's not 6'1". I'm not, I'm not that big of an asshole. But on your profile, just be honest, because sometimes for some women that really makes a huge difference. Yes. It's just a thing that we do. I know men get butthurt about it. For us, it's for me personally, I like to feel like my man is bigger than I am. It's kind of like a protective thing.
Exactly.
If I'm wearing heels, I want you to be taller. I'm not trying to do the whole Nicole Kidman, Tom Cruise thing.
Sure. Sure.
So anyway, so I show up. He's shorter than he says he is. He's definitely not as good looking. However, that isn't necessarily... Somebody's personality could win over their looks for me. Right. So I was like, okay, well, let's see how we vibe. So we get down, we sit down, and we're starting to kind of talk. It's, I can tell he's a little, he's kind of dorky, which I don't mind. Sometimes dudes are dorky, and I think it's actually absolutely adorable. He was dorky in I can't read the room way.
Okay.
So we start
socially awkward. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Yeah, socially awkward, and especially for a professor at at UCLA, you would think you're around students, you're speaking to people, you would have a little more finesse about you, or charisma. And we start talking about he said, we were talking about what we do for a living, and I was asking, it was good, back and forth questions, that was flowing. It's not like he just talked about himself. So I said, oh, so you're a professor at UCLA? He's like, yeah, this is what I teach. And I said, oh, my mom actually graduated from UCLA. And he's like, oh, that's amazing. He's like, did you go there as well? And I said, no, I did take college courses, but I didn't graduate. In my field, you don't need to have any type of degree to do it. You go to like an accounting technical school to be able to do. I do business consulting and bookkeeping.
Oh, cool. Okay.
And so he says, "Oh, were your parents disappointed in you?" I was like, "What the fuck?" I was like, "Could you be more insulting, asshole?" Like, I literally was just like, "This dude is such a tool." And I was like, "No." I was like, my parents were very proud of me and my accomplishments, and then I had to add in just to fuck with him a bit. I mean, it is true, but I was like, and my mom died when I was like college years. And that kind of like, I was like, I need to just throw that in there. Like what he just said was so fucking insulting. And like, were they disappointed? It was so random. I was just like, and they died. And he's like, oh. And I'm like, yeah, asshole.
Were they
it was
disappointed?
like, yeah, really disappointed that you didn't graduate college. And I'm just like, dude, this isn't the 1950s where that's like expected of it. Like there's people who are literally like Instagram influencers, have nothing but a college, diploma, or sorry, a high school diploma.
A high school diploma, yeah.
And like, they're making like millions of dollars. Like in this day and age, you don't need a college degree. Like it was just so snotty and so judgmental. And I was just like, this dude is so lame. So then we're having a drink or whatever. And at that point, you know me, I'm not a big drinker, but I was like, yeah, I definitely need a drink to sit through this.
I'll take two. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, make it a double, bitch. Like, so I literally I finished the drink and then I feel like I just at that point, after he said that, I just kind of zoned out and I was like, you know what, this is trash. Like so when we left, I feel like he thought the date went fantastically. And I was just like, get me the fuck out of here. So he walked me to my car and I literally could just like not get out of there quick enough.
He tried to kiss you?
No, thankfully.
Okay.
Thankfully, he did not try to kiss me, but he was like, oh yeah, we should make plans again and this, that. And I'm like, yeah, I don't think so. So that was probably the weirdest, most random thing that I've ever come across, like to be insulted on a first date. Like,
oh, that's so bad. I mean, I'll take it a step for like, you're right. The college degree is not what it used to be, but the college debt definitely is not what it used to be either.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like I, have a full business spending $2,000 on the training that I got, and probably can make more than a lot of other people who do have a college degree. So, I feel like that's one of those things. It's just kind of like you do what works for you.
Oh, 100%.
And, like don't be a judgmental asshole. Like just
on a first date, especially. Yeah.
Oh,
hey, how
God.
you doing? Gosh, I wonder if we're going to go out again. By the way, were your parents disappointed in you by any stretch? I don't care if you're talking about like paint by numbers and you did a bad paint by number. They can't ask that question or think that thought. That's stupid.
Like so dumb. Like just the guy had no clue.
Oh God, that's awesome. Well, I'm sorry. That's an awesome story. I'm sorry you had to endure it. Holy shit. That is awful. Yeah. All right. So the question that I probably ask it too much to everybody. I think I'm even asking the guys, how many dick pics do you think you've gotten?
A lot. But for me, that depends on if they're like, whether I get carried away with that is more in the sense of like the context of it. Like I may have actually invited dick pics.
I should ask that. I'm sorry. Do you request them too? Like my sister, one of your best friends, I think, requests them. And that was the first one where I went, whoa, okay. So I should have asked it better that way. My apologies. So unsolicited maybe is what I should have asked.
Yeah, so unsolicited, not that many in recent years. Most guys at this point they're a little more respectful with that. Way back in the day when I was on Plenty of Fish, I would get a lot of unsolicited ones. Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Like where you've had literally 2 sentences of a conversation and then they're like, bam, here it is. To which back then I wasn't as, I guess, emotionally mature or like sexually mature to where, I kind of didn't know what to do with that, 10 years ago. Whereas now, if that happens, I'm just like, ew, you're a creep. Like,
so you mentioned it earlier, and I probably should have gone to this question instead of the dick pics, but I can never help myself for some reason because it always makes my jaw drop. But
it's hilarious.
That date you said changed kind of how you went about things. So how did things change?
So at that point, I felt like I need to do like a pre-screening, right? Where I either would chat with them by text for a good week before I would decide if a date was even kind of worth it. Because it's not like I would just talk to one guy at a time and like waste my time. I'd be talking to several guys and kind of like pre-qualifying them for a date. Or I would do a phone call. And within that phone call, depending on what they were comfortable with or not, I would do a phone call, see if we were like, had good rapport, we're vibing on the same frequency. And then at that time, if they asked me out, then I would say yes or no.
That's cool. That makes sense. I think when I first was on the app, somebody wanted to do a phone call and I was against it, not because I was against talking to the person, but because I have this really big personality. And so in my head, I'm like, phone call's no big deal, whatever, this will be fine. Why don't we just get to the date? I'm not realizing how many people don't have personalities. And then it was explained to me in a couple of ways, kind of like what you're saying, but also like there was one girl that said she was texting back and forth with a guy and he was so funny and she couldn't wait to meet him. And what she didn't realize is the text, he had time to think about what he was going to say and it was witty in that capacity. And so when he sent it back, he sounded funny. But when she sat across from the table from him, it was like just talking to the wall. It's like, all right, that makes sense. That's totally on me. So I've learned over the years, yeah, it makes perfect sense. So the phone call, sounds super important.
It really is. Yeah. And even some people, especially during the pandemic, like a lot of my girlfriends would do FaceTimes or Zoom calls with somebody before they'd actually meet up. And I think that that's a really great way as well, because then you can see the person. So you can kind of see their mannerisms, see if there's like an attraction there, and kind of go from there. I actually haven't done that. I tend to be a little more shy in the beginning. So for me, I really like to either text for a while or do the, do a phone call.
Okay. Makes sense. So now your best date, whether you ended up, having a relationship or not.
Yes. So last August, I went through, Mandy knows this. I went through what I call my hoe phase. I was just meeting guys and, it was just more about like experimenting and just kind of getting used to, because as you know, I dated women from like 24 to 34, strictly. So I kind of had to like get used to men and their behavior and like, they're very different, animals compared to women and the type of like relationships.
Animals is the right term, I think. Yes.
Yeah. It definitely can be.
Carnal.
Yeah. And so I kind of used last year as like a, kind of figuring men out and how I relate to them again, because, when you're with women, it's the emotional side of it is kind of automatic. Now, don't get me wrong. There's definitely women that are players. I've definitely dated a few of those too. But for the most part, I've always had like a better emotional connection with women. So this was like just trying to kind of figure all this out last year. So I did have a few hookups, which were totally fun, totally worth it, great experience. And then it got to a point where I was like, okay, I'm looking for a relationship now. So as I told you, I was on Tinder and Bumble. I had met this guy, we'll call him Paddington.
Right.
Paddington
the bear, yeah.
Paddington. If for some reason he ever hears this podcast, he'll know why. Okay. But anyways, I met this guy and we just hit it off immediately. And we texted for probably a good 10 days before we met. And it was one of those connections where the sparks were flying, the mental and emotional connection was I was just so wooed, so excited. He was too. We were practically finishing each other's sentences. He was super respectful, super fun. And I was really excited. So we decided about 10 days in that we wanted to obviously meet in person. So at that point, I was like, it was still COVID time. I was like, you know what? Let's go for a walk around a park. There's a park pretty close by to me, and it felt safe as far as the COVID thing. And then it also felt, I'm very after that shitty date, I was like, I do not want to be fucking trapped in a restaurant. If this goes bad, I want to fucking way out quickly.
Good point. Yeah.
So, and it's he and I had this amazing connection, and from pictures we were yeah, we're attracted to each other, but you never know once you're in person, right?
Right.
So we met at the park, and of course we're both super nervous, and he's kind of shy, I'm kind of shy, but we literally walked around this park area for a good I think he had timed it on his phone or whatever, and we ended up walking for 4 miles.
Oh, nice.
And it was just it was so cool. Again, respectful, but flirty. Right. He did end up kissing me. And literally the next night I was he was actually a little more shying away from the whole sex thing. Uh-huh. And I was just no, we're doing this. So I invited him the next night, and we ended up in a relationship.
That's cool.
For probably a good 4 months. So cool. Yeah, it's it really wasn't about where we were. It was the content of that connection and all of that. That's so awesome. That I would definitely say that's the best date. Yeah.
All right. So there was the psychological connection more than just the 4 miles around the park then.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. It was just such a amazing. It was we literally said that night, we were sitting in my car after we had walked 4 miles and we were both we're probably going to get married someday. It was just so, we were so in sync with each other that it was, it was just yeah, we probably are going to get married today. At some point.
That's one of those where he's talking to his friends the next day. He's like, how did the date go? And he's saying, I'm sore. And they're thinking, attaboy. And no, man, I walked 4 fucking miles. So I'm sore.
Totally. Yeah, absolutely.
So how long was that date after after Professor Chaos?
Meaning from Professor Chaos to when I met Paddington?
Yeah.
Well, I think I met Professor Chaos. That's a great way to describe him. I think that was 2020, and I met Paddington in August of last year. So
okay.
It was kind of it was kind of a year in the making. Right. And then when I started in 2021, I probably got on the sites in April and talked to a ton of guys. And so from April to August is,
because you mentioned the PTSD from the professor day to that one. So that one must have stayed like, no, we're not going anywhere in clothes. We're staying out. Yeah. I need like to pull in case of emergency to get out of this fucking day.
Literally. Yeah. I was like, where's the parachute? Yeah. I am busting out of this window. Yeah. But that was the great thing about it. It was kind of like it gave me an idea of how I wanted to handle things going forward.
Then you have the success and all right. So, and that was phone calls and him and everything worked out a little bit better, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So not that you need me to say it, but you said, I think your host stage, which like it is so hard to just find happiness. So like to chase happiness, it looks different for absolutely everybody. So like, go do whatever stage you need to do or needed to do. Cause Lord knows putting a smile on your face is not the easiest, or anybody's face is not the easiest thing to do in the world.
No, it's not. And that was such a needed experience. And it was only like a couple month period, but it was like, so it was totally fun. It was informative. I got to, check things off my sexual bucket list. I was doing things that I had always thought of. And I was just like, this is amazing. And then it was kind of like, all right, I'm done. I want a boyfriend now.
Yeah. Liberated and free, right?
Totally. Yeah, absolutely. I feel like there's a time and a place for everything.
Without you doing that, do you think it would have taken a lot longer for you to get around the just the mentality of dating men?
Yeah, probably. I feel like every single experience, whether I just talk to a guy and it was kind of flirty, to meeting them in person and having the intimate experiences, and then meeting Paddington, who kind of really like, he set the bar high and he set my standards up higher going forward, even though we ended up breaking up. Like it was one of those relationships that was just, it leveled me up in so many different ways. So now when I look for a partner, it's like I've been through all the bullshit. Like now I know what I want and how I want to be treated.
I love that. If I would hug that Paddington bear if I met him. That's awesome.
I mean, yeah.
That's awesome. All right. So creepers. Mini creepers or creepiest date or anything like that?
So I have some old school. These are like plenty of fish days.
I'll take them.
I have had a few that were what I call stage 5 clingers.
For sure.
The kind of guys that you can tell are like, they probably don't mean anything by it, but they're like, they just want to be loved. And the way they're going about it is in a really sort of desperate, I'll say anything you want, and not in like a manipulative, like love bombing way, in like a just kind of this weird, insecure, desperate way. And I remember talking to this one guy who, I believe he was in law enforcement, and he was, at first the conversation was good. And then he gets into how he would let his girlfriend or wife hook up with other men. But he wouldn't do that on his end. Like he wouldn't want to go out and, bang other women or anything. And I was like, okay, it was a little off-putting. I mean, most women would be like, yeah, it's a dream. But for me, I was like kind of looking more into like his psychology. I was like, yeah, most people are not down with that. It's either you're in a monogamous relationship or you're in an open relationship, or you both, where it's equal, like you're both, having other sexual partners or whatever.
Right.
And then he tells me that one of his biggest, one thing that he wanted to try. Now, I will say this. At this time, I was not turned on by the thought of a man being with another man. I was like, no. Like, even though I am bisexual, there was something about a man being with another man that was a turn off to me.
Me too, by the way, just so we're clear.
Yeah.
Just so.
Yeah. Now that has changed in
not
my,
for me, but okay.
Not for you, but yes, like for me, like I've been with men now that have been with other men. It does not bother me. In fact, that might actually be something I'd be down to watch. However, This guy was talking about how he wanted to be with another guy, and I was kind of like, I can't imagine this like law enforcement dude sucking a dick. Like I'm imagining, I'm just, at that time, I just was not as evolved. And I really was just so turned off. I was just like, ew, okay. So judgy. And like, for me, that aspect, I look at that and I'm like, that's so cringe, Galen. Like, you're bisexual. You should know better. It's cool for people to want to experiment. But at that time, I was more closed-minded about it. And, I think I had told him something like, I think that's cool if you want to do that. But like, I'm not really the type of girl that, wants to be with a man who wants to be with another man.
Was this date one?
No, we actually never got to the, we never got to date one. No. This was all like literally within one, text messaging, like, shit. After I kind of, softly rejected him, he kept texting, and it just got more incessant and more incessant. And it was creepy to me because I was like, this guy is in law enforcement. He probably, my name is Galen. It's not Jennifer. Like, you can find me.
Right.
So that was kind of creepy. And then another time also on Plenty of Fish, I was sort of like getting flirty with this guy. We were doing a little sexting, and he told me that his fantasy was to have a threesome with a woman and his father.
What?
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh shit, the therapy. Oh, the therapy that's needed.
I was like, oh, this dude is so fucked in his head. Like, like I'm open to, at this point in my life, I'm open to most things. I am not into incest in any type of that's creepy as fuck. Like, you actually want to see your dad's dick and like your dad having sex with the girl you're dating. Like, no, that is all kinds of wrong. So I definitely heard some crazy things. But
you must have been from Kentucky. Oh my God.
Right? Or Alabama.
My dad. Yeah. Oh gee.
Yeah.
Holy so, and like, you talk about like he had a shot. Like, he had a good shot to meet you and have a great night of sex, and then just throws out there, God, my fantasy, here's a picture of my dad. How about if he comes? You're just like going, this ain't the motherfucking Brady Bunch, bro.
No, like, and here's the thing, like, there's I'm at an age now where, I could possibly have sex with a guy who's like in their late 20s or something, if I wanted to do like a Madonna or J-Lo thing, like not opposed to it in a certain situation. Like, I could essentially bang you and bang your dad,
right?
Because your dad's probably more closer in age to me, like older than me a little bit, but not at the same time. Like, and I mean, that's not like, I'm either I wouldn't be doing that. However, like in a logical sense, like, yeah, I could do that. But not, like not, no, I'm not trying to bang you and your dad at the same time. That's creepy as hell. And not because it wouldn't be okay for me.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's not okay for you guys. And I'm watching this, and no, it was so fucked up. So I literally ended the conversation. I don't remember what I had actually said to him, because again, this was probably like 8 years ago. But I just ended the conversation. And at this point, him and I hadn't spoken on the phone or anything. Well, then he starts incessantly calling me. And I'm going, oh boy, like, and I didn't know if he was actually telling me that story to see how I would react, or if he really meant it, like, yeah, it was so weird though.
That's so like what you're saying. So if you brought it up, if you're like, man, dude, you are a good looking dude, and so is your dad, I could bang you both. That's one thing. If he's like, hey, by the way, it's fucking bring your kid to work day, and I was just wondering, if you wanted to come too. Like, that's just wow. Yeah. Wow. And I'm afraid that I hope he didn't get like his aunt or sister to be the third one in that whole family equation, because that's,
oh my God,
dirty. Jesus.
Yeah, it was just so over the top and bizarre. And I have to say, truly, that is the weirdest thing I've ever, because you're right. Yeah. He totally did have a chance. Like there was a physical, sexual flirtiness, connection there. And it could have been fun for like a hookup kind of dynamic, but and he had a chance, but he threw that in and just totally ruined it. And he was just kind of like, I don't understand. Are you upset with me? Like it was this weird, I was like, bro, that like, you need therapy. Like, yeah.
Did you tell him that?
I don't think so. I think at the time I was still a little like shy to say, like kind of speak my mind. In situations like that, now I probably would be like, that sounds like a really unhealthy thing. Like you might want to talk to somebody about that, but
that's a trip. I can't say I've ever heard that before at all. And you handled it a lot better, I think, than most people did or would.
I tried, like again, it was just one of those, like, I don't even know what to say to that. Like, that's so fucking far out there and creepy that. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So off and on been doing this for a few years. If you were to give any advice to women, what would the advice be?
Ooh, that is a really good question. There's probably a few things. Number one, you have to go into it with really no expectations, but kind of have a goal in mind. If you're looking for a hookup, you can still have a hookup or a friends with benefits situation that is respectful, kind of on all levels. You don't have to let men kind of run that show or act in a sleazy or disrespectful way. There are guys out there who, like I do have a sort of friends with benefits, and there's no emotional connection between him and I. It's purely on a sexual basis, but it's still very like mature, if that makes sense. Like you don't have to go into playing games or like. To me, I feel like there's a way to do it in a fun but mature way. And also knowing if you are going to get to a situation like that, you have to know your own boundaries with it, like emotional boundaries. It's always a little bit harder for women to have if you're going to participate in hookup culture, to get feelings and all that. So it's kind of like know your boundaries with that. And then when it comes to relationships, I think a lot of women get stuck in situations with men where it's leaving them confused about men's feelings. I have gone through that before, and I will say, and I'm sure you can back me up on this, if a man is truly interested in you, you will not be confused about how he feels about you. 100%. Because a man who is interested is actively pursuing you, is very engaged, is consistent, and treats you with respect and kindness, and doesn't play stupid games or isn't confused about whether he wants a relationship or not. Like I've been there, and I don't want other women to get stuck in that. But I don't know. He said this, and now I'm confused. Like with the right guy, and this is why I'm so thankful to Paddington, because he proved to me that he was sort of the catalyst for me to realize like how a man treats you if he's truly interested. So if you are confused about a man, that means he's not that interested.
Yep, totally agree. You sound like you really like. I know I'm stating the obvious, but like Paddington came around at the right time and gave you exactly what you needed. Just in life, not just in a relationship. Is that
totally true? Yeah, absolutely. Like even though that relationship didn't last, it was exactly what I needed to prove to me, because I really had a negative view of men. Like I had really only been around these dudes who want to hook up, and I didn't really know what it was like to be treated with like the utmost love and care. And Paddington brought that to me. Really, he changed the game for me. Like it doesn't matter that we didn't last. I still have love for him, but we just long-term compatibility just wasn't there. But he up-leveled everything for me and my standards. And I know going forward, when I sort of get back into the dating world, like now I really know what I want and what I will accept and what I will not accept.
That's awesome. Like it really sounds like going into that, and this feels more and more common on these sites as women see the worst of what men can be like and just lose their faith in men. And that seems more common than not.
1,000%. Yeah. I was one of those people. I went into it with such a sort of negative attitude. It was just like, oh, all men are the same. Like they're all assholes. They're just after one thing. And a lot of guys are, but you can weed them out and not take it personally. Like I see a lot of women who have been through these experiences, and then their defenses get up and they really do start taking it personally. It gets very, it's tiring. It's exhausting. It's, and I feel like it's like that for everybody, men and women, but they get down on whether they'll ever actually find their person. Whether they, just want a long-term relationship or they want to get married. And I was one of those women until Paddington came along and changed the game. And I'm like, no, there are good guys out there. And I do feel in the future that I will find my person. So
good. He gave you hope. I'm happy to hear that, for sure.
Definitely.
For sure.
Thank you for being along for the ride on the Swipe Wrong podcast, where we take everyday people like you and me telling their everyday stories of their swipe right life. Show is produced by Jay Pelham. He is the host of Pelham Place. If you want to reach out to the show and tell us your story, we'd love to hear it. Give us a call. Google Voice us at 317-426-6616. Leave your information and we'll get back to you, or just your story. You can also email us at swipewrongpod@gmail.com. We are on Insta, Facebook, TikTok. We're out there. I am Chaos, the host of Chaotic Commentary. You can find me pretty much anywhere that you see me. And next week, the saga continues.
Swipe wrong. Swipe wrong.